The factory hummed with relentless activity, a symphony of mechanical power and human precision. Conveyor belts whirred, metal clanked, and a rhythmic hiss of steam vented from pressurized pipes. Overhead lights flickered slightly, casting long shadows across the sprawling industrial floor. The air carried the unmistakable scent of oil, heated metal, and faint traces of chemical residue, an aroma so familiar that workers barely notice it anymore. Men and women in protective gear moved with efficiency, each step ingrained through years of routine. Forklifts maneuvered between towering shelves of chemical drums, and robotic arms dispensed exact measurements into mixing vats. On the surface, it was just another busy shift at the Harrison Chemical Processing Plant. But hidden beneath the hum of industry, an invisible danger stirred. One that had no color, no scent, and no immediate warning. It crept unnoticed, threading through the air like a ghost, waiting for the right moment to strike. David Ross, the factory's seasoned supervisor, adjusted his safety glasses and stepped onto the metal platform overlooking his team. His voice carried over the industrial din as he held up a clipboard. "All right, listen up. Today's workload is high, but that doesn't mean we cut corners. Safety is our top priority. I don't care how many years you've been here. PPE is mandatory at all times." A murmur rippled through the gathered workers. Some nodded, tightening their gloves and adjusting their face shields. Others, like Mark Carter, a 15-year veteran, simply scoffed. Mark crossed his arms, his gruff voice laced with irritation. "I've been handling these chemicals longer than some of you have been alive. Never had an issue." He waved his respirator mask dismissively. "It's overkill." David's gaze sharpened. "Mark, you know the rules. We have these protocols for a reason. Either wear the mask properly or step off the floor." With a dramatic sigh, Mark yanked the mask over his nose but left it loose, as if the extra effort was beneath him. A small act of defiance, but one that would soon prove dangerous. Meanwhile, Emma Vasquez, the newest hire, stood near the back of the group. She was in her third week, still eager to prove herself. She double-checked the straps of her gloves and tightened the seal on her own mask, glancing nervously at Mark's reckless attitude. David wrapped up the meeting with his usual reminder. "If you see something off, say something. We don't take risks here." No one knew how crucial those words would be in just a few hours. The factory floor bustled with movement as workers dispersed to their stations. Emma joined her assigned team near the chemical mixing vats, carefully measuring solvents under the hum of industrial ventilation fans. The air seemed normal, but a few aisles away, Lisa Patel, one of the plant's chemical technicians, frowned as she passed the storage area. Amid the usual noises of the factory, a hissing sound whispered from somewhere nearby. It was faint, almost indistinguishable from the other ambient noises. Lisa paused, tilting her head. "That's strange." She scanned the rows of pressurized storage tanks, but nothing seemed obviously out of place. Still, the sound unsettled her. She made a mental note to bring it up with Jake Carter, the plant safety officer, during lunch. A small delay, but one that would prove costly. Hours passed. The relentless churn of machinery continued. The air, unnoticed by most, had begun to change. Emma rubbed at her throat. A faint scratchiness, probably just a dry factory air, she thought. But soon, it turned into a tickle, then an irritation. Her fingers tingled. She flexed them, dismissing the sensation as fatigue. A few stations over, Mark coughed into his sleeve. His mask, still loosely worn, had slipped slightly. He barely noticed. "Damn dust," he muttered, shaking his head. But this was no ordinary dust. Lisa finally found Jake in the control room, busy logging equipment checks into a tablet. She leaned against the doorway. "Hey, I heard a weird hissing sound near the chemical tanks earlier. Might be worth checking." Jake glanced up, distracted. Yeah, sure. I'll take a look after I finish these reports. That moment of hesitation would make all the difference. David was in his office when his computer blared a sudden alert. A flashing red notification appeared on the screen. Abnormal chemical vapor levels detected. His pulse spiked. His chair scraped against the floor as he shot to his feet. Within seconds, he was sprinting toward the chemical mixing area. The moment he entered, a sharp burning sensation hit his eyes. Workers were rubbing their faces, coughing, moving sluggishly as if trapped in a slow fog. Something was terribly wrong. Everyone stop. Evacuate now. David's voice cut through the confusion. Some workers hesitated, looking around in alarm. Panic didn't fully set in until Mark suddenly stumbled, then collapsed. He hit the concrete floor hard. "Mark!" Emma gasped. Lisa was already pulling her toward the exit. Jake and another worker rushed to Mark's side, struggling to drag him away from the contaminated area. David's hands were shaking as he slammed the emergency ventilation override, triggering an immediate air purge. The factory-wide alarm blared, sending workers scrambling. Outside, fresh air cut through the thick tension as emergency responders arrived. Dr. Susan Miller, an occupational health specialist, knelt beside Mark, checking his vitals before securing an oxygen mask over his face. "He's lucky," she said grimly. "This is acute chemical exposure. Another few minutes, and he'd be in critical condition." Lisa stood nearby, shaken. "We didn't smell anything. How did this happen?" Dr. Miller pulled up air quality readings on her tablet. Many industrial chemicals are odorless and colorless. By the time you notice symptoms, exposure has already begun. The culprit? A small, undetected leak in one of the storage tanks. Over time, fumes had seeped into the air, accumulating until it reached dangerous levels. Mark, now semi-conscious, managed a weak rasp. Should have taken it more seriously. David clenched his jaw, determination burning in his eyes. This would not happen again. The next day, an emergency safety training was held. New protocols were introduced. Frequent chemical storage inspections, mandatory gas detection badges for workers, enhanced emergency response drills, stronger encouragement to report safety concerns immediately. Lisa was commended for her quick thinking. Jake, now more aware than ever, vowed never to delay an inspection again. As David stood before his team once more, his voice was firm. Chemical hazards are silent. Just because you can't see or smell them doesn't mean they aren't there. Stay vigilant, speak up, and never assume you're safe. No one would forget that day, and no one would make the same mistake again. Every moment matters. Every choice counts. Stay informed, stay prepared, and most importantly, stay safe. Hit like if you learned something new, subscribe for more safety insights, and turn on notifications so you never miss a life-saving tip. This is Prime Shield, shielding lives, one story at a time.